Welcome to the New Wealth Wave podcast hosted by Dr. Joaquin Wallace. We're diving deep into the intricate layers of the 7-stage generational wealth model to offer invaluable insights on legacy building, wealth accumulation and preservation, and financial growth across generations. I'm Dr. Joaquin Wallace, and this is the New Wealth Wave podcast. Hey, future wealth builders. This is Dr. Joaquin Wallace, and thank you for joining me on the New Wealth Wave podcast. Today, we're focusing on stages 4, 5, and 6. And to help lead the discussion will be Dasarte Yarnway, who is the founder of Yarnway Wealth Management, a firm focused on helping business owners and professionals live their best lives. Dasarte, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Dr. Wallace. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It is an honor and a privilege to be here talking to you about something that's really dear to my heart, and I look forward to the conversation.
So if this is your first time tapping into the New Wealth Wave podcast, it's based on my 7-stage generational wealth model, which is broken into 3 phases. If you haven't seen the model, make sure you tap the description and download a PDF copy as well. And make sure you subscribe. So stage 1 is your internal and external ecosystem. Stage 2 is your financial genetic code, which focuses on financial trauma and anxiety. Stage 3, which is financial healing, which is reprogramming your financial genetic code, which is a byproduct of stages 2 and 1. Stage 4 is financial edification, which focuses on financial literacy and financial inclusion. Stage 5 is financial well-being. Listen, we're all trying to get there, the soft landing, making sure we don't outlive our money. Stage 6, generational knowledge, where we focus on planning and transferring your assets to create those financial footprints to generational wealth. Now, Dasarte Yarnway has said he's going to come on. He's an expert, a thought leader in these stages. And so we're focused on stage 4, 5, and 6. Did I miss out on anything that you like to tell our listeners?
First and foremost, I just want to say that I love the model that you've created. And I think it's a mental model that a lot of people can resonate with and attach to. My entry point in the industry was working at a very reputable firm, and they called their financial advisors investment counselors. And while their business model didn't support the fact that they were investment counselors, I really took to that name because I thought that an advisor has 2 jobs. On one end, they're supposed to be money handlers, right? You're essentially supposed to be good stewards of a person's financial assets. But on the other end, you're supposed to be a counselor, somebody that they can sit on this, couch, sort of like going to a therapist, understand their fears, their concerns with money. And if you marry those 2 things together, you have a recipe for success. So I think this formula really, really encapsulates all of the different components about money that people have. And if they're following it and going through the stages, they can really make significant difference in the way that they view and use the tool of money.
I tell you what, that's probably one of the best endorsements I've heard. Thank you, but I need you to write that out as well. So first and foremost, before we get to the heavy lifting, tell us a fun fact about yourself.
Yeah, fun fact about myself is that I am the only boy of 6 siblings, and I'm the youngest, right? So a lot of people are like, do you have siblings? I'm like, yeah, I got 5 older sisters. I'm the youngest. Safe to say that I was really spoiled as a kid. Ate well, got a lot of gifts, right? But also learned a lot. I like to say that I was sculpted by the hands of queens, and they were instrumental in helping me to become the man that I am today. So that's a fun fact that people typically don't know about me.
And you mentioned earlier off camera that you used to play football. You was a running back for Cal. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Man, my football experience was one of the best experiences of my life. I played high school football at Sacred Heart Cathedral Prep in San Francisco, California. At Sacred Heart Cathedral, I was All-American nationally. I had over 40 offers to play Division I football at the time in pretty much every major football conference there was. I chose the University of California, Berkeley because my family's here. My mom was a single mother at the time, raising me, my 5 sisters, and a host of what I like to say brothers and cousins because my family's from Liberia, the Civil War, so a lot of people came and kind of stayed with us in our house. Got to Cal and it just opened my eyes up to something that I've never seen before, which was the wealth, not only in money, but the wealth of knowledge that was being passed around. So I like to tell people that I learned the most sitting next to people that had different experiences than I did, right? So I grew up in San Francisco, Hunters Point, Bayview, Visitation Valley, Sunnydale area, right? Which is a impoverished area. So going and sitting next to kids who, took summer vacations and their families started businesses really introduced me to the concept that I can pretty much create anything that I want to create. My playing experience was awesome. Like any athlete, I faced some couple of injuries, led me to get into finance, but I don't take that experience for granted. And I still lean on some of those things that I've learned in that kind of stage of my life, season of my life to build out some of the ideas that I have in my head. So shout out to UC Berkeley, go Bears. Looking forward to seeing what they do in the ACC next year.
So you had a chance to look at the model. So one question I've always asked, I think this kind of sets the stage for the model itself. Before you became who you are today, where were you at on the model?
Yeah, I think I was at stage 2 on the model, which specifically financial trauma. One of my earliest money memories, which kind of led me to being a financial advisor, was being in the room when my mother and father declared bankruptcy. So I remember that as a kid. And I remember my mom, kind of working a graveyard shift, my dad working various jobs. Right. So inherently, you just inherit some of these practices with your money because that's all you've seen. All you've seen is survival. All you've seen is, the lack of resources. And, for me, my entire existence as I look back was to find ways to obtain a more stable future for myself. Right. So like many young boys in the neighborhood that I was in, one way to do that was to play sports. So after my father passed away, I put every drop of energy into doing whatever it meant to be able to not pay for college and put myself in a position to succeed, right? Which eventually, I hoped at least, would help me to get a better financial future, right? So I think stage 2 was sort of the place that I was at because unknowingly, I had a lot of trauma about money, right? And to this day, I feel like I still have to work hard to not let those experiences trump the knowledge that I have, right? So I love the model because it makes it very clear to understand where you are on the sort of the spectrum.
And it's interesting because that's the purpose of the model. It's a fluid model. And I like how you mentioned that because depending on where you're at in your life, that's what kind of positions you in the model. So when you look at the 3 phases, you look at the past, the present, and the future. So with that being said, what was your aha moment that you said, you know what, I'm going to make a difference? What drove you to do that?
Yeah, so the aha moment, I think it was a series of unfortunate events, to be honest with you. The first event was I got to Cal my true freshman year, and I was a baller. I was probably a little more not in shape than all of the other guys that have been there for a couple years. I had not gone through a kind of college off season to get prepared. But when it came to just having a natural instinct to play the game of football, they couldn't tell me nothing on the field, right? I was good, but I got injured, right? And then I came back. And then 2 years later, I tore my ACL, got injured again. So that was really the introduction to the diversification for me, and not from a money perspective, but from a time, effort, and talent standpoint, right? It was like, I can diversify my time, effort, and talent to ensure that no matter what happens, I'll be okay. So at the end of my playing career, I had an option to come back, play with Jared Goff in my 5th year of eligibility. Or I applied for maybe 256 jobs to be exact on LinkedIn to figure out what I would do with my life. I really wasn't thinking about life after football, but I was giving everything a shot. I then got an offer to work at a really prestigious firm. And I saw at that firm that folks of affluence, monetary affluence at least, were using their money to work for them instead of working for their money. And that blew my mind. So the name of the game at that point was equity. That was an aha moment, right? So I guess there's 2 significant moments in that story. The first one is, how can I use my time, talent, and energy to diversify my odds, my chances? The second is, how can I now use my monetary resources, right, to ensure that I have equity and I'm not working for money? So those are the 2 things that really stuck out to me. And they was like, aha, this is how they do it. This is how they build wealth. And this is how I can use all of my God-given talents to continue to be stable, right? And hopefully have something to give to, my now daughter who's 21 months, my wife, right? And hopefully the generations to come.
That's outstanding because again, the model is perfect to kind of fit where you're at right now. And you're so articulate because you've been through it as well. And I was a former athlete, so I understand the transition, how hard it is. Mm-hmm. It is a challenge as well. I coach college athletics. So when you mentioned the fact that, you're coming in, not having that off season, you really make your most growth. I used to tell my athletes coming in, their parents, you make your most growth after your first year, right? If you play your first year, then you say, okay, these guys are pretty good. I need to get in shape. There's some things I need to get acclimated to doing it, kind of moving off the subject, but I love talking sports. But one thing that you think about is that it's not only just the athletic piece of it, right? It's the time management, which is so important. The lifting of weights, the eating, to be focused in, out. Each day you have to be focused. And most importantly, it's a job. It's fun, but it's a job as well. And your coach's mortgage is relying on your performances and the other ones as well. Interesting thought. So currently right now, where are you at today on the model?
Yeah, I think I've kind of risen a little bit, right? So I've left the place of having financial trauma. I think I've been financially healed. And I think I'm in a place of like financial well-being and generational knowledge. Like that's kind of where I am. And I say that because with everything I've learned, just to give you some context, I lost my dad when I was 12. So I had to look at individuals, usually Black men, that I felt like I can resonate with and I wanted to be like, right? So I would choose people on TV and say like, yeah, I want to build a business like this person, or I like Denzel's presence when he walks in the room or something like that, right? So you just begin to attach yourself to role models. And in doing so, I attached myself to a lot of financial role models who were speaking about things like equity, who were giving me knowledge on how to invest in businesses, whether that was by working there, getting equity, right? And hopefully participating in some of those gains. So I accumulated all this knowledge and I began to implement it over time. And that has dramatically affected my financial well being. So I think I'm in a place right now where I have sort of a financial well being. I have a lot of knowledge that I can pass down to my family and my community. And I'm looking to increase that because I think that there's levels, right? And the level I'm at, there's one ahead, there's one above. I have a kind of a moniker that I use, Dr. Wallace, and it's called push pull. So essentially, the higher someone climbs, and we can use your stages here, the higher somebody goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? No matter where you are on this kind of spectrum, you have a responsibility to push those ahead of you to continue to do their best work, learn, get the knowledge. But you also have the responsibility to pull those behind you so that they can come through the same doors that you were privileged enough to walk through. So I think that my goal at this financial well-being stage is to push those ahead of me, right? And look at the former me who's probably at financial trauma and pull that guy through the same doors that I have been afforded to walk through, right? So financial well-being, to answer your question in short, but I thought that context would be helpful.
No, that's great. So talk to me about some of the clients that you meet. Give me like a demographic, a profile of the clients that you assist right now in your business.
Yeah, I think this is an important thing to say. Like right now, it wasn't the clients that I served when I started. So when I started, you didn't have to have any assets because I saw myself, and I still do, as an investment counselor. So literally zero clients, young professionals starting to accumulate wealth. Heavy accumulators were the people that I worked with in the beginning. Now I work with business owners and, professionals that have built up a healthy nest egg. Typically our business owners want to do a couple things. They're probably in the stage of, financial well-being or close, and they are looking to monetize their business in a way, right? So either grow their profits, sell their business, or do some sort of initial public offering. So my clients they're doing well, they're growing their assets, and they're trying to really align their money with their purpose.
So let me ask you a question. So when you look at your clients that you have, what were some or what are some of the hidden barriers that they face that you have to kind of demystify to allow them to kind of move forward?
Yeah, hidden barriers. It's funny that the stages, right, are written in this way because I think that some people, especially those that may have legacy businesses or legacy wealth, right? We're going this way. Like I'm healing financial trauma and coming to around to well-being and knowledge. But some people start the opposite way, right? It's like they're already financially well off. They think they have knowledge, but they kind of don't, right? And then they're kind of doing it the reverse way. So I say that just to say, like, there's many ways to explore these stages, and everyone's starting point is different. You can be born into wealth, but still have financial trauma that you have to go back and retroactively fix, right? You can have nothing and still have to heal the financial trauma of having nothing, and then getting to the point of being in a financially well spot, right? I just want to say that before I answer the question about barriers. The barriers for my clients happen to be the lack of knowledge specifically for running and scaling a business, right? Because when you run a business, a lot of people are experts at what they know. So like I have a sister who's amazing at braiding hair. She has a beauty shop, right? And I mean, she's seeing 15 to 25 clients a week. And these ladies pay a lot on their hair, right? But she knows nothing about marketing, about taxes, about, sort of the IRS tax code, what she can do to really run her business in the right state. And I find that no matter, if your business grosses $10,000 or $10 million, there are these things that people just don't know and they need help with to ensure that they're in good standing, but also that they're treading towards their goals in the right way. So I think the biggest barrier for a lot of people is just like, I don't know what I don't know, but I know I'm good at creating this product, this service, and I need you to help me, fill in those knowledge gaps so I can be the best version of a business owner that I can be.
That's interesting because I mean, you're a financial person as well as I. And one area that I find with individuals, and remember the song, more money, more problems. We
Hmm.
don't think, but they have more issues as well when you have more money, especially business owners, because many of them came from a situation where they were self-starters. They built
Hmm.
themselves up from the bootstraps, right? And they didn't have the education from behind them. But like you mentioned in your earlier example, here's an individual that's really good at what she does, but she has not the knowledge to move forward to get to financial
Hmm.
well-being, right? Which is important because many of these individuals, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well, they're carrying a lot of baggage, from stage one in terms of their internal and external ecosystem, stage two, financial trauma, anxiety, the financial genetic code. And where you come in, most of the time, we're in stage three. We're financially healing and then reprogramming their financial genetic code to get them to move forward to get to that point of retirement. Because at the end of the day, I say this, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. Every person has a different perspective on what financial well-being actually means. And
Right.
when you find that out, then you can chart a path organically to allow them to get there. Because I firmly believe that financial literacy is not linear, it's organic. And it's one piece to the
Mm.
puzzle, but it's an important piece to the puzzle. But it's not the final piece to the puzzle, if you know what I mean. Elaborate upon
Right.
that.
Yeah, financial literacy to me is the key that unlocks opportunity, right? So it's like the more you know, the more tools you have to go out and build your best life, right? And to me, I call that financial alignment. So often you find people that, they're doing one thing, they feel like they don't have a lot of tools, but once they become more financial literate, they know that they're not stuck in a certain situation and they have way more opportunities to them. So I agree. We meet people when they're financial healing, when they know a little bit more and they're eager to learn more to be able to get to whatever their purpose is, whatever their goals are. So yeah, I think financial literacy, once a person hits that stage of healing, they have now opened the door to opportunity to align their life with their purpose.
So let's talk about aligned financial planning. Give us some perspective on that.
Yeah, this is probably a hot take on financial advice, but traditionally our industry is like set to have people think about one goal, and that goal is retirement. That's a big goal, right? Because we know retirement is like where the assets are, how people are going to save. Everybody's eager to not work and not be in the rat race, and I think that's an important thing to plan for. But along the way, there are a lot of milestones, there are a lot of financial goals and endeavors that people have and want to fulfill. There's also a mission that everyone, whether they know it or not, are trying to accomplish. There's a reason why you go to work every day. There's a reason why you value vacation. There's a reason why you want to have kids, start a family, have a house, right? There's a reason for all those things. So in the process of doing aligned financial planning, you're stripping away sort of the numbers in the beginning of the conversation. And you're simply asking a person, what is their mission? Like, what are we really planning for? And that's a hard question for a lot of people to ask because it forces them to be very introspective and it forces them to open up themselves to the counselor, an investment counselor, right? Like you have to be vulnerable with somebody to say that. I'll give you an example. When we have our client onboarding meetings, I ask my prospective clients 4 questions. One of the most important questions is, what is your mission? I don't know, retirement? They just don't know what their mission is. I'll give an example of my mission. My mission for my family is to be the genesis of health for my family, right? Health, underline, that means financial health, emotional, mental, and physical health. Like everything for my wife and I before us was okay. Sometimes it wasn't healthy, it was okay. But we've never been in a position of well-being across the board, right? And that's something that we want to create. So aligned financial planning is taking that mission and saying, if this is the mission, this is the financial plan that aligns with that. And this is what we need to do, right? So I think, for me, we've had a credible success rate. Last year, our business grew to over 85%. This year will probably grow 100% for the simple fact that people can connect to their mission moreover than what the industry wants you to connect with, which is standard retirement planning, estate planning, et cetera.
I think that's fascinating because when you look at it from that perspective, and when I do planning, I ask those questions as well. You're familiar with this. I use the Harvard case study format, believe it or
Right.
not, with the central issue, what is the question, what we're trying to accomplish, the significant factors, we look at the qualitative and then we look at the quantitative, which can be, their assets, if you will. And then we look at the RCA, recommended course of action. And then we come up with a methodology. And then we do an internal SWOT analysis because, that's important to do as well, because as you mentioned, the client have to be vulnerable, right? For them to actually start. If they know too much, they're not going to listen,
Right.
but they're coming to you for an answer. And it's important that you're able to put together a game plan, a winning game plan. I want to go back to a topic that you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned you and your wife. Now, I really believe that when you have two people, and this could be in business as well too, you have two people coming together in a union, both individuals come from a different stage one, internal and external ecosystem. And stage two, financial genetic code. And then financial healing. You mentioned both you and your wife and many of your partners as well in terms of business come from a different place. How do you flush that out to make sure that they're on the same page and alignment to get to your aligned financial planning as well as financial well-being and eventually generational knowledge to generational wealth?
Yeah, well, communication is the gateway to vulnerability, right? So, using my wife and our relationship as an example, we have a weekly family meeting where we communicate about our family, upcoming things, partner feedback, right? And just what we're aiming for. So, I think in any relationship, business, personal, professional, intimate, you have to communicate to be able to reach that point of vulnerability that sets the table for alignment, joint alignment, right? And I think that's the part that people miss. So in our conversations, as you know, I own equity in a bunch of startups, a bunch of business. I own equity in a bunch of things, right? And I'm asking the founders questions so I can know what's up. So I can be totally aligned. There's like no questions that's off limits. So if I'm going to be an investor in something, if I'm going to be your partner, right? I have to tell the truth. I have to communicate because then we can come together and say, with this information, we know that these things are important to us and this is how we're going to help each other get there. So again, communication is a gateway to vulnerability, and vulnerability is the only way that you can align with your mission.
So when you think about when an individual says, I don't have a mission, in all likelihood, they don't know what a mission is. So from that point, do you give them homework to actually come up with a mission statement?
No, I don't. And this is probably going to be, I don't know, drops mic to your listeners, but you can't bestow a mission on a person. You can't force them to find their mission. Time and experience is the only thing that can do that. So whoever that person is probably not the right person for my firm personally, and just might need to be a little more exploratory to understand what their mission is. Now, I'm not saying that every client at our firm has a mission, but they're eager to find out what that is, right? They're eager to go through the planning process and get vulnerable, right? And to make their assets make sense. I believe that everybody knows what that is internally. And the more you kind of talk about it, the more you go through numbers, the more you put goals on the board, you find people are like, I thought this was going to be the thing, but it's not. I'll give you an example. I grew a business, over 6-figure business, doing well, pretty easy, great time, work-life balance. Then I got to this place where it's like, okay, this business is worth a lot, but I don't really like it. I don't really like what this is. I don't enjoy this, and I can't see myself doing this for 30 years, right? So I think that type of time, that time of experience leads you to the place where you have a mission, where you can do things solely based on that mission statement. The second part of that whole thing is in financial planning, what we ask people is, hey, what are your goals? Right? And they say, hey, my goals are to retire. I want to take my kids to school. I want to buy a house, right? I want to lease them in the end, standard. But people are going to have decisions in between, right? They're going to have decisions in between retirement and just life, charting the course. So one of the questions that we ask our clients to ask themselves, one of the questions that my wife asks, I actually got this practice from my wife and I in our conversations. If we want to do something, we simply ask this question: does it align? And if it doesn't align with your mission, that's something that you probably shouldn't do. It's a temporary impulse that will either propel you or draw you back from what your mission and financial plan suggests, right? So again, knowing your mission, I mean, that's one of the most important things that a person can do in this lifetime. Is like everything that I do is pegged, is connected to this thing. It's one thing. And then two, as you go through your decision-making process, reminding yourself, asking yourself, does it align? And if it doesn't, it's a no. You have to pass. So I just wanted to throw that in there as people listen to kind of the decision-making process here. And I think that's a hard thing to do because some things that don't align might make you a lot of money, as I stated before, right? Some things that don't align might, provide a certain lifestyle. Some things that don't align may be fun, right? But it doesn't align. So I think that's an important thing to note as well.
Well, that goes back to stage 5, right? Because financial well-being, again, for everyone is different. One thing that I speak about is we look at stage 1, we're taught, in particular in marginalized communities, to become rich. And rich is temporary, but rich is something that is in our vocabulary. And that's the alignment piece. Oftentimes we find individuals who made it if you will, and their focus is to become rich, and they are rich. But in the end of the day, it's transactional. The true health is the financial health, like you said, the work-life balance, being able to do things that you enjoy doing is way more important. But again, until you shift and grow mentally and spiritually to understand this is where I want to be and have the right people around you, because that's important as well too. Number 3, in terms of Maslow's 5 hierarchy of needs, social environment is so important. And you find that. And so, what's some of the best practices, financial practices you have for business owners?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, I just want to kind of chime in with what you said. You talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A book that I would recommend everybody read is Naval's Almanac. In that almanac, if you don't know about Naval, he's a philanthropist, philosopher, investor, sort of a bunch of startup companies, immigrant that came to the States and just is crushing it. And simply, he's like, when you boil it down, everybody wants 3 things. And this is peace. This is contentment. Number 1, they want a calm mind. Number 2, a fit body, fit and healthy body. And number 3, a house full of love. Everything else is just like vanity or interest, right? And I think that's important for people to understand, like, why? I talked to my wife about this the other day, Dr. Wallace. I was like, what is required of me to get to $1 billion is a lot. I kind of like this right here, right? Like right where I'm at, I like this. I can pick my daughter up from school. We can go on trips. We have a nice house that we live in. You know what I mean? We can enjoy some things from time to time. $1 billion means not doing those things. It means not tucking my baby in at night. It means staying up late, right? It means probably more gray hairs for me. And I don't know if I want that, right? So a calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love are things that I strive to have. And I think that's, most of the people that I talk to, they want that as well. Now, in terms of business owners, and I think your question was, what are some things to think about for them?
Your best practices.
Yeah, best practices for business owners is just, 1, have a power team. Power team for a business owners is an attorney, accountant, bookkeepers, and a financial advisor. I think that's extremely important to have that power team. That's something that we package up for business owners in our business. We call that business essentials. So you have everything that you need going forward. We do that for you. Number 2 is just have a mission for your business and a mission for your life, right? So the founder and the business, although they're connected, are 2 separate entities, which I think is important. And a lot of the times as we move through our career, we are looked at as like, there's one thing, like this person is the founder of Airbnb. That's his identity. And you'll be surprised because these are 2 separate things. So have a mission for your business and your life. And then number 3, understand what the end goal is. One of my favorite blog posts, Dr. Wallace, is a blog post that was by Seth Godin, phenomenal author. It's a 1-line blog post. And it was like, it's okay to stop when you had enough. And, a lot of business owners need to understand what enough means for them. And when you get there, it's okay to stop. Nobody's making you do this, So understanding what the end goal is, I think that is extremely important, having a mission for your business and your life, understanding what's enough, because that helps me as a planner to help you get there. One of the examples that I love, and I tell this story all the time, is had a client, business owner, started a marketing agency, just him and his friend, right? Started booming. Started getting all these clients, business making $50 million a year, decided they wanted to selling the business for $300 million. Right? If they would have done something called a QSBS, which is organizing your business as a C Corp, holding the business shares for 5 years, lots of that money would have been tax-free, federally tax-free from the sale, right? So these different planning aspects help business owners with retaining more of their wealth, right? And you're able to do more, but that starts with knowing what the end goal is, right? So if I ever make another business, I know what I want to do. Like I want to sell this business. I have a plan, you know what I mean? I know what I have to do. And you kind of reverse engineer your way into that goal. So those would be the 3 for me.
Future wealth builders. I mean, my man, he is dropping knowledge. Dasarte Yarnway, again, this has been outstanding. I hope you're taking notes. I've learned something new as well. And that was the purpose of the podcast, that I wanted each episode, somebody can take something away and learn something new. And I'm going to ask you again, what's the name of that book? Because I'm going to get that book as well, because if it's anything that, like you said, that's something I need to align myself with as well.
Yeah, so I would say that book changed my life. The name of the book is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Naval is spelled Naval. Ravikant is Ravina. That's one book. And then another book is The Purple Cow Experience by, I forget the author's name, but essentially he's saying if you have a business, what you want to do is create an experience that makes people stop and see and listen. So if you were driving on a highway and you saw a purple cow, you'd be like, what is that? It's incredible, right? It's something different. And I think as I create things, because I think I'm a creative first, these 2 things are things I want to do. Have a calm mind, fit body, house full of love, and to create things that people are in awe and wonder, right? So definitely check those out, Wealth Builders. It's been incredible.
I want to tap on something else. So this space that we're in is a very, very oversaturated and fragmented market. Today, you hear a lot of conversations anywhere where anyone has a platform to speak in regards to financial literacy, wealth, and things of that nature. How did you and how do you separate yourself and differentiate you from the other players that are out in the market?
This is the thing. Information is free. Implementation is expensive. So I am not mad at people trying to build their influence by sharing information, but actually implementing that information to a degree that is beneficial for the end client or user is very difficult, right? So my differentiation is my philosophy, alignment with financial advice, right? And then number two, the implementation of that philosophy. And I think doing is always going to be harder than just knowing. Right. So I think it's quite simple. I know it's anticlimactic, but the doers are the ones the future belongs to. Right. And I think what you're experiencing online are just people that have information. Anybody can log on and get the information, but it's the doers that the future is reserved for. So, I'm focused on doing, I'm focused on creating. Right. And by doing that, you change your own, not only wealth trajectory, but you change your impact along the way.
I love that you say that. I really do, because I feel the same way. I had a conversation a few weeks back and I mentioned the same thing. Do you have a lot of information, a lot of individuals that are speaking and giving great knowledge, but at the end of the day, you have to be in a position to implement and do. And that takes to having various opportunities, whether you're in a broker deal or whatever the case may be, to be able to make that happen. And you're in a position that you're saying, hey, I can give you the advice, but most importantly, I can implement it for you as well, which is so important, because that's how I operate as well too. The purpose of this podcast was to give people education and to give people a platform such as yourself to say, hey, I'm out here too. Not only can I give you information, but I can help you move along the model itself. I can help you get to your financial well-being, and I can help you generate wealth as well, which is so important. I love how transparent you've been on the show itself. In particular, when you're speaking about your significant other, right? That's always a conversation that people really don't want to talk about. But for the most part, it's a conversation that needs to happen, that doesn't happen enough in the homes, in particular in marginalized communities. Kind of talk about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to do right, I think you got to share that. I think a lot of some of the issues that I see clients have is because, especially those that are in high grossing industries, is like they're not sharing information. So, I had clients that were part of the Uber IPO, Airbnb IPO, a lot of money on the table for some of those experiences, right? But because one woman isn't talking to the next, you see a 50% difference in pay, right? So I think the best thing that we can do with our information is share it, because there is going to be somebody that will be able to implement that information and change their life, right? So if it wasn't for some of the people that have helped me and shared information with me, I doubt that I would be in the position that I'm in right now, right? To have the autonomy to kind of choose what I want to do, with my business, or what I want to do next, right? So me sharing kind of the conversations I have with my wife is just an extension of trying to have impact on, people that could be listening, right? And hopefully those messages go way further than just our podcast.
Absolutely. So talk about the advisor journey.
Yeah, Advisor Journey is a podcast with Altruist. Altruist is a fintech custodian that I use for my practice. The Advisor Journey is just sharing tips like this, but specifically for financial advisors that are trying to grow and scale their firms. So up to date, we get about 40,000 downloads. And it's been incredible to sit next to Jason Wink. Jason Wink is a investor, former financial advisor that has sold two RA businesses with over $1 billion in assets, and has essentially created technology to allow other advisors to do the same. So fly to LA at least twice a month to record those episodes, and I get to meet with some of the best advisors in the industry. Ron Carson, Steve Lockshin, big players in the industry. And it's been a pleasure to kind of run that podcast as well.
So is that something you started or you were brought into?
They were looking to start it, and I started it with them. So the Advisor Journey is definitely the podcast, their flagship podcast and content resource. And it's amazing. So if you are a financial advisor or are interested in a financial advisor business model, strongly recommend that you go over to the Advisor Journey and give it a subscribe.
We're definitely going to give it a shout out. And thanks again for you coming on. I tell you what, this has been a great episode. I put a lot on your plate, stages 4, 5, 6, and we touched a little bit of 7. So I just wanted to be able to get your expertise, so to speak. So one final question for you. What do you want the listeners to take away from this podcast?
If you're listening to the podcast, know that whatever you put your mind to, you can make it happen.
That's the biggest thing. Information is a resource to be able to do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing, some of the ideas that come from that.
How can people get in contact with you?
Find me on LinkedIn at Dasarte Yarnway, and then info at Yarnway Wealth. That's my last name. You probably see it in the show notes, yarnwaywealth.com.
Future Wealth Builders, this has been an outstanding episode. We'd like to thank Dasarte Yarnway, the founder of Yarnway Wealth Management, to join us this afternoon on this powerful podcast. On behalf of myself, the New Wealth Wave fans and podcast, my producer, Ray Haycraft. Mr. Yarnway, thank you for coming on. And Future Wealth Builders, remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. And I'll see you on the next New Wealth Wave podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the New Wealth Wave podcast, hosted by Dr. Joaquin Wallace. Our show is edited and produced by Ray Haycraft. To dive deeper into the world of financial wisdom and learn how to create your financial footprints, head to our website at www.drjwallace.com. For more updates and exclusive content, connect with us on social media by searching Dr. Joaquin Wallace. And if you have questions and comments, feel free to email us at thenewwealthwavepodcast@gmail.com. Remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. And as always, thanks for listening. The content presented in this podcast is strictly for educational purposes and should not be taken as investment advice. The views and opinions expressed by our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the New Wealth Wave podcast and its host or producers. Listeners are urged to exercise discretion and judgment before making any financial or investment decisions. Always consult with a financial professional or advisor before taking any action based on the content of this podcast. If you're enjoying the New Wealth Wave podcast, we appreciate if you leave us a review. We're always open to topic suggestions and guest recommendations. Feel free to reach out to us directly with your thoughts and feedback. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the New Wealth Wave podcast.